Welcome to the Ordinary Extraordinary Cemetery, where every death had a life and every life had a story. My name is Jenny Johnson.
Hello, I'm Diane Hartshorn.
And we have a very special guest with us today. This is the second time in the history of our podcast that we've recorded with an international guest. So that makes it a lot of fun for us. Takes a little more coordinating time-wise. And of course, we are still in the process of getting used to having gone back into daylight saving time. So, there's we decided an 8-hour time difference between us. So while Diane and I are recording this at 8 o'clock in the morning, our guest is 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or about over in Israel. So we would like to welcome to this show today, Avrohom Krauss. He is an educator and a genealogist, and he specializes in Jewish resources and cemetery research, of course. And so we are super excited to have him on the show. So thank you for working with us and joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. For our listeners who are on all of the audio formats, just to give you a heads up, he has a presentation he will be doing using slides and stuff. We'll turn our screens over to him a moment. So you may want to, at some point, even if you're listening in the car or whatever later on, go check out the YouTube channel so that you'll be able to see the presentation that he's about to present for us. But Avrohom, go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself and what got you interested in cemeteries to begin with.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Jenny and Debbie, for having me. I'm very excited. Like I was saying before, it's good to know that there are other people that are interested in cemeteries and that I'm not the only crazy guy. So, so I got interested in cemeteries actually from a very young age. I think it takes tragedy sometimes to do it. I was a very young boy at age 6 when I lost my grandfather, my only remaining grandparent that I knew, and I was so little. But although I didn't attend, my parents didn't have me attend the funeral because they, that in those days at least, young kids were shooed away from that. But I did go to his unveiling. And it was a difficult experience, but I think it left an impression on me that cemeteries should not be looked at as places that are just eerie and cold and scary, but
Right.
it's a place of love, for my relatives, So I had my grandfather there, and I think that sparked an interest. But my interest is expanded from the fact that. Besides I'm an observant Orthodox Jew, so I mean, cemeteries is something where we have things that are related to observance that go together with cemeteries and remembrance of the dead. So that's something that comes naturally. So the other thing is, then I got into this genealogy bug, and I became a genealogist. And like, you can't really be into genealogy without cemeteries. So between all these things together, you put it all together, and I try to do as much globetrotting with Jewish cemeteries as I can. It's only from time to time that I have the ability to travel, but when I do, I try to see my ancestors or go to special landmarks.
Oh, I love it. I love that you include the cemeteries on your travels. I know I do that. I know Diane does that. I know sometimes people are like, wait, you're stopping at the cemetery? And we will go to cemeteries where we don't know anybody that's buried there, but there's something fascinating about the cemetery and you just need to stop and check it out. So I'm going to turn our screens over to you so that you can pull up your presentation. And we are so excited. You came to us because you had heard one of our other episodes regarding Jewish cemeteries, and you had actually emailed us. And unfortunately, he was one of the ones who got lost in our mix of weird stuff that happened with our website, and we weren't notified of him. But I'm so glad because you sent that email quite a while ago and we reached out to you
Yeah.
and you were like, oh no, I'll still come and do this presentation.
Yeah, I
So,
was sure that you said, "Oh, who's this guy reaching out?"
No.
He wasn't. And
no.
it's really out of character. I usually don't do these things. I usually, I've spoken, but like always, I haven't put myself out there. I don't promote myself like that so much. So, I thank you for responding. I figured they just, they just weren't interested. Okay, they didn't reply, but no,
Oh no, we're
thank you
very
for
interested.
replying.
And to have somebody of the Jewish faith, especially the Orthodox Jewish faith, one, you will be able to pronounce the words much better than Diane and I do. We do struggle sometimes with some of the words, and we try our best with the pronunciation, but not having grown up with the words, I know we trip over them a lot. So it would be lovely to have somebody who actually knows how the correct pronunciation, but also, these are your traditions, you know them, you understand why you're doing the things that you do with them. So I love that we are going to have you be able to break that down for us and explain that to our listeners and our viewers, for those of you watching us on YouTube.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cemeteries of the Honorable, Forgotten, and the Unknown. I'm Avrohom Krauss, and today we're going to talk about Jewish cemeteries. Benjamin Franklin is known to have said, "Show me your cemeteries, and I will tell you what kind of people you have." And that's precisely what I want to give you a little taste of certain people in the cemeteries that I have visited. First, I want to start off with a story. This is a picture of the family of my great-grandparents. The Rogozin family. My grandmother is the little girl standing on the chair on the right.
Oh.
And this was taken around 1895 when she was around 3 years old. And this is the family unit that I was familiar with. But through my genealogical studies, I found that there was another child. This is a death certificate of Annie. This child, Annie, was also known as Sarah from her birth certificate. And she was born on 14th of November of 1897, but died 36 days later from, according to the death certificate, from hemophilia.
Wow.
The place of burial is not so clear, but it says Silver Lake. Silver Lake Cemetery was a cemetery that I was not familiar with. But we will speak more about that. We'll see. Because there was another child. Around a year later, they had another child. Her name was Fruma. And this Fruma was born in November in 1898 and lived only 10 days. And she died of pneumonia. The first baby that we saw, I left that out, died of, I said hemophilia. Yeah, and so this one died of pneumonia. And there was back-to-back two baby girls. These girls would have been my great aunts, but of course they died as babies, and no one in the family, by the time I started doing the research, had ever known of this. But these two little girls were born in Silver, were buried in Silver Lake Cemetery. That's on Staten Island in New York. This cemetery, this is a nice drawing of that cemetery, is a cemetery, like I say, I didn't know about it, but it was an old cemetery, very old cemetery, and it was owned by what later became known as the Hebrew Free Burial Association. This was an association that was created for indigent Jews who couldn't afford their own burials. And you're talking about immigrant families like my great-grandparents who had just recently emigrated to the United States. And they were, barely scraping together their dollars to put food on the table. So it makes very good sense that to find them in the cemetery. The cemetery is almost approximately half of the burials there were children. The mortality rate of infants in those days was very high, and there were a lot of people who I'm sure were in the same predicament as my great grandparents and needed burial and needed help.
Right.
I'm sure they needed help at that time, and here it was. So they had this cemetery, this institution, Free Burial Association, that cared for all Jews, no matter whether they could pay or not. This was done for free, and no expectation of payment. When in our tradition, we are told that burying a person is the greatest act of kindness. It's a kindness that a person does for totally pure motives, because it's not something that a person could get repaid for. When a person's not here, when you do a favor for someone, they could reciprocate. When a person goes from this world, they cannot. So the people that are behind, that are caring for the dead, are doing it solely for the reason of taking care of that person, and that is a loving kindness that is of the highest level. And people who need burial, this association help those people, including my family.
And did
So
that burial include the headstone as well, or was that something different? Because in the
uh,
photo that you're showing
well,
now for our listeners that can't see it, it's a lovely photo of the cemetery, and you can see a lot of headstones very close together.
right. Well, that's a very good question. I'm glad you brought it up, because many of especially the children, the infants that died, there are
Mhm.
no headstones.
Mm.
And when I try to find out, where they're buried, that's what I was told. That there are no, they're trying to put up, to erect stones, and they've done so, and you'll see a little bit later. But I don't think the project has been completed, and I think they don't even know where all of them are buried. It was
Right.
done. It was done, at times where who knows? It was a long time ago, and they just put them into graves, but they were individual graves. And oops, I'm sorry, I just lost it. Uh, okay, there we are. Um, you'll see that one of the things that they did was to save children from Potter's Field, or anyone for that matter. Uh, that those people who couldn't afford burial typically went to a Potter's Field. In New York, there was Hart Island, and here you see a picture of this is what was done. They had these mass graves where they had coffins for the dead, which were numbered, but they stacked them 100 or 150 all in one place, and hoping that maybe people would claim them. But usually after they've been in the morgue for so long, and they went to the Potter's Field, that probably no one was there to claim the deceased. But this was they prided themselves, this organization, that no Jewish person had to end up in Potter's Field, because they had the resources to help them. And so this is it was a double thing that they did, because they saved people from Potter's Field, but Jewish people of the faith only have burial in strictly exclusively Jewish cemeteries.
Right.
So this was a very important institution, and it still exists today. And they do a lot of work with the immigrant population. A lot of the Russian Jews from the former Soviet Union, from that area. A lot of them have the need, and they're doing, excuse me, they're doing these things today. So that is Silver Lake. But the Free Burial Association had two cemeteries. The first one, like we said, was Silver Lake, and that was opened in 1893. The second was the Hebrew Free Burial Association, which when the first cemetery was full, they started a second cemetery, which is called Mount Richmond. They're both on Staten Island in New York. Now let's move on to a different topic. This is for those people who have studied labor unions and those types of things, and women's rights will probably be familiar with this, but it rocked the world at the time. There was an uprising, and it was called the Shirtwaist Strike of 1909. There were women that were the immigrant women that were being employed. They were employed for pittance. They hardly made any money. It was the conditions were brutal. They worked from morning to night, 7 days a week, without any type of respite. They were crowded in these factories, elbow to elbow. They couldn't even leave the building. There were a lot of difficulties that they had to endure, and at that time, as we know, women didn't have a voice. So they were trying to unionize and all these other things, and there was an uprising that happened in the year of 1909. They wanted all the factory owners to comply to their demands and to unionize, and not everybody listened. In particular, there was this young woman of 23, Clara Lemlich, a recent immigrant Jew from the Ukraine, who galvanized. She was the voice of thousands. She galvanized 20,000 women for this uprising. And this was what they did. They were fighting for their rights and for, as you'll see, for their lives as well.
And for those listeners who are listening, he's showing some photos from the early 1900s during this uprising. So we've seen pictures of the women protesting, and they've got their signs, and also some of the locations where all of this was happening.
So this is in New York. And here it is, a famous building. It's the Ash Building that housed the factory that was called the Triangle Waste Company. Some of you may be familiar. They were one of the targets to try for them to improve their working conditions and to unionize, but they did not comply. 2 years later, in 1911, there was this tragedy. This was a fire broke out in the factory. Not the exact details of how that happened are murky. Some say that either a match or a cigarette butt was thrown into a trash bin, and the trash bins, you're talking about a factory that with cloth, and
Right.
the only thing that wasn't combustible were the metal machine. I mean, everything else, there was wood in the building, and it was a tinderbox, and it broke out on the 7th or 8th floor, but it spread to the 7th, 8th, and 9th floors, or 8th, 9th, and 10th, I believe. And this was at the end of the day. It was a Saturday, March 25th, 1911. It was like 20 to 5 in the afternoon. It was almost time for them to go home, and this fire broke out.
Mm.
The fire company, the fire engines, the firefighters were overwhelmed. They had, at that time, they were not prepared to deal with this building. Their ladders couldn't reach high up enough.
Right.
Their hoses didn't reach, and I think it was one floor short, but it went up 3 floors. And the alerts, it was a disaster from many fronts. They didn't get out on the person in charge of who got the call that there's a fire that didn't notice. They were supposed to inform the other floor. One floor got notified, the other floor didn't. It turned out into a disaster, and the whole thing went up, and 18 minutes later,
Wow.
the place was engulfed. They had this was the greatest tragedy that happened on the American soil until 9/11. And there are some eerie similarities. They also had people jumping out of the windows like they had at the World Trade Center, and the fire was just overwhelming. They had people. They jumped onto nets that couldn't hold them. They went through. I mean, the details are very gory, and the tragedy is just so heartbreaking. And but that's what happened because they didn't because of the doors were locked. The doors in those they didn't have fire sprinklers.
Right.
It was something that was suggested, but of course, if the law doesn't mandate it, it doesn't get done.
Save
They
a
had
penny by not
doors.
putting them in.
Yeah, well,
Exactly.
it took this tragedy to change things, but they had doors that opened up inside instead of outward.
Mhm.
So they were trapped. The doors were locked, and even those that wouldn't be locked, they could not open them because people panicked and they ran out. They stampeded to the exits, and there wasn't. It was like I say, the details go on and on about the fire escape couldn't hold everyone. It was too narrow. It collapsed. The elevator shaft collapsed. There were people jumping into the elevator shaft trying to get into the elevators. They fell on top of the elevator, which made it unusable. It went down to the bottom of the building. The operator was going ahead, and the elevator operator risked his own life because he was making trips up and down into the fire to rescue these girls. Most of the workers were young immigrants, and you couldn't call them women. They started. The youngest two of the workers were 14 years old. These were recent
Girls.
immigrants. These were mainly Jewish and Italian immigrants. Many of them had just come to the shores of America. They didn't speak the language yet. They were just thrown into the work environment for themselves. And as you know, those of you familiar with the immigrant experience know that the immigrants did not only care for themselves. When they came, they came and they had to, their meager salary, they saved part of it because they had to bring over the rest of the relatives.
Right.
Each one who came, and then they try to bring the next one who came, and then tried to bring the next one, and together that's how they lived. And they lived this life, and with, like I say, without any no protection. They were vulnerable. They were exploited, and this is the result: the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. Oops. How do I get back? The New York Times reported that there were 140 men and girls that died. The actual
Right.
figure went up to 146.
Wow.
So what happened to the girls, the Jewish girls? Again, these were needy people. These were recent immigrants. So the Hebrew Free Burial Association in Mount Richmond took care of 22 burials from those victims. Here's a tombstone of one of them. It's a 17-year-old girl.
Yeah.
If you see over here, it's
Yep.
Triangle Fire. And they would call it the Triangle 22, that the 22 ones that were buried. So this is in Mount Richmond Cemetery. The Hebrew Free Burial cared for her and the others. There's a memorial in a different cemetery where others are buried, Mount Zion Cemetery, also a Jewish cemetery. And this is the memorial for the victims of the tragic Triangle Waste fire.
And for our listeners who are just listening to us, it looks like it's a marble memorial that stretches on with individual names on different sections of the memorial going down. Ugh. This is
Next,
heartbreaking.
does anyone recognize this picture? Nice boat.
I was gonna say,
I
is that
wanna
the
say
Titanic?
Yes.
No.
April 14th. This is a photo from April 14th, 1912.
Wow.
The next day, we
No,
know
it
what
is.
happened. This is the Titanic.
Mm-hmm.
The Titanic, just about a year after the Triangle Waste fire, there was this tragedy of tragedies, the Titanic, April 15th, 1912. There were survivors, but there were many prominent people. This was the luxury liner that was, quote unquote, unsinkable.
Right.
And they had a number of very well-known and wealthy people. The wealthiest of them was John Jacob Astor IV. He was worth at the time 87 million, which in today's terms was I don't know how many billion. And and he was a victim. His money couldn't save him. But of the Jewish passengers, there were also some very wealthy individuals. One of them was Benjamin Guggenheim. They say he went ahead and when he saw the fate and that the women and children were the ones that were saved first. There weren't, again, talk about tragedies upon tragedy. It's just that it wasn't enough that the boat was sinking, but um, there were no proper provisions made for that because they were too cocky. They were the belief that they were unsinkable. They didn't have enough lifeboats. They had to give preference to the women and children, and that's why most of the survivors were women and children. The men had to see had to endure and realize what was happening. They say him and his secretary went ahead when they realized their fate. They went ahead and they dressed in their evening wear, and that's the way they went down.
And
Another famous.
for anybody who may not be as familiar with the tragedy, the other part with those lifeboats, because people didn't believe the boat could sink, the first several lifeboats that left the ship weren't even full. They could have put more survivors on them, but there were a lot of people that refused to get into the boat thinking that the ship wasn't actually going to sink.
Yes, thank you. There was another couple,
Mm,
the Strausses,
Strausses.
Isidore Straus and Ida Straus. Isidore Straus is mainly known, he was the co-owner of Macy's in New York City. He was a very wealthy businessman and philanthropist. Um, he, his wife, again, women were given preference, and his wife was given a place in the boat, and she refused to leave her husband.
Yeah.
She said they live together, so they'll die together.
We
And
actually covered them in one of our Valentine's episodes. We covered
really,
their story. Yeah.
well, some of it has been. I believe that they made some uh, movie productions about the Titanic, and I think they featured Isidore and Ida like hugging together as they were going down,
Yeah.
which is a little bit not exactly what happened, but it gives you the sense that yes, they did go down together. I mean, his body was found, and
Right.
in turn in New York, her body was either never found or not recognizable because there were bodies that were recovered, but
Mhm.
they didn't have DNA forensics in those days, and so she was one of the victims that tragically did not have a burial. So yeah, those are the Isidore was the co-owner of Macy's together with his brother, who we'll speak about. The Titanic has been there. You see the hugging, the couple
The
hugging.
couple,
They were
yeah.
the subject of movies and songs and plays and all types of things. So this was a Yiddish version of this is the publication, or this was an arrangement by piano, a song that was made in their honor, I guess, or it just features Isidore and Ida on the cover there with an angelic figure putting like a halo above them.
That's a very neat drawing, actually. I don't think I've ever seen that one before.
Yeah, it was put up by the Hebrew Publishing Company in New York. And the words of the song was made up of the Solomon Small. Of course, he changed his name. It was not Small, it was Shmulevitz, if you could
Which you can
pronounce
see in
that.
parentheses, very small beneath the Solomon
Yes.
Small.
Yeah. Yeah. I may have a little bit more trouble with the Italian name over there. Rusotto, is it?
That's what it looks like, risotto. Yeah.
Rusotto. Yeah.
H.A. risotto.
That's the arrangements for piano. Yeah.
There's violin
Okay.
music available too.
Yeah. I'm sure you could find these things, if you Google it. There were 150 bodies that were recovered near Halifax in Nova Scotia. And 121 went to the Fairview Lawn Cemetery. That's a non-sectarian cemetery in Nova Scotia. 19 went to Mount Olivet Cemetery, which was a Catholic cemetery.
Yep.
And 10 went to Baron D. Hirsch Cemetery, which of course is the Jewish cemetery. Now, how they went ahead and decided where these bodies, where to go, it wasn't easy identifying people. Supposedly they were all going, I think, to Fairview, or I don't know what it was, but I know that the rabbi in Halifax went down to the morgue and tried his best to identify the Jewish bodies. Now, like I say, there was no DNA forensic type of analysis done, and it ended up that for sure one person that was buried there was, I guess they decided by his name. His name was Hoffman. But Hoffman, number one, Hoffman is not necessarily Jewish. If people who know names, it often is, but it's a German name. It's not necessarily Jewish. It happened to be he was also traveling under an alias that wasn't even his name. But so either way, but he was mistakenly thought to be Jewish. So and of those 10, only 3 of the Jewish ones were identified. So it was sort of like I guess they decided, to try to decide who was who, and then bury them accordingly, which was not an easy task.
No.
Here is the site in Nova Scotia. This was a cemetery. Disclosure: I was not in this cemetery, but I wanted, for the sake of this, I wanted to fill it in. So don't want people to think I didn't get to Halifax. I didn't get there yet. I've been to Canada, but not that far north. And so this is the plot of the victims that were recovered and thought to be Jewish. There was a Jacob Birnbaum who was recovered. He was a diamond dealer. He was born in Krakow in Austria, which was Galicia at the time. And he was a diamond, and he was actually he lived in San Francisco. He was originally from Belgium. I mean, that's where he had family, and he was visiting his family and doing business. Antwerp is, of course, those of you who know, is a diamond center.
Right.
It used to be the diamond center, the diamond capital of the world. It's, I think, been usurped by somewhere else, and I can't remember where. But anyway, it was at the time that was the center, and he was there for business, and he was persuaded by his family there to stay for the holiday of Passover. So he was really originally not even going to be going back at this time. He stayed for the holidays, but he stayed on holidays, and supposedly his family didn't want him to go. He was booked on a different passage,
Oh
and
no.
that passage was either canceled or they moved him onto the Titanic.
Mhm.
So his fate was sealed by a number of things that, well, if
Right.
but that's the way things go. So he's buried not in Belgium. He's buried in the Pute Jewish Cemetery in Pute, Holland. And the reason for that is also very interesting. Um, in certain countries, and Belgium is one of them, um, the cemeteries are only give a person 50 years. Cemeteries are for 50 years. After 50 years, they could do with the property what they feel is um, more advantageous to their society. But those of us who respect the dead, and certainly in Jewish tradition, a person's place that is not to be tampered with. And so the Jews of Belgium bury across the border in Holland. And so
Oh.
that's why he was sent to Pute for his burial, and he's buried there with the rest of the Jewish community in Holland. If you notice at the top of his gravestone, this is all in Hebrew, his gravestone. There's a
Mhm.
beautiful poem. I'm not going to read it, but on the top, look what you see.
Oh,
See the
sure.
top
Oh,
of it?
it's the ship. I just noticed that.
Yeah, I didn't notice it at first either until it was pointed out.
It
There's
is.
a
It's the
ship. That's the
yeah.
Titanic. And so that was put on his gravestone.
Oh, that's cool. I've never seen one like that before.
It is a beautiful marker.
Yeah, and for our listeners who can't see it, the way the ship is angled, it looks like it's sinking down at the one end. It's a little higher on the other side,
Hmm.
to give you the idea of that's what happened. Oh, that's neat. I didn't even realize that till you pointed it. I mean, I noticed the top of it, but there's the trees right behind it, and so
Right.
I was
It blends
looking
right.
at the writing on the stone itself, and the Hebrew characters, and then until you pointed that out, I did not realize that's what we were looking at.
And just to point out also that in the Hebrew, it mentions that he was he drowned in the Titanic. It's
Oh,
it's it's bolded. It's bolded. If you could see my
yeah, right there in
mouse
the middle
right
almost.
there, that's the Titanic. And
Oh,
yeah, so it was yeah, like right after the holiday of Passover,
wow.
and he was buried right before the holiday of Shavuot, which is Pentecost. That comes in the next like 2 months
Right.
um, after Passover. So that's the tragic story of Jacob. This is Isidore Strauss's grave spot, and look at what you see here.
Ship.
Another
Yeah,
But it's
rendition
like
of the
a,
ship.
yeah.
yeah.
Again, when I first saw this photo, it was taken from this is not the first one I saw. I saw one from a distance. It was taken from a distance, and I didn't notice, it didn't. Then when I saw this up close, I say, hey, there's another ship. I wonder how many other victims have had some type of marker on their by their graves that it was that they were victims of the Titanic.
Wow.
But I thought you and the viewers would appreciate this.
Oh, yes, very much.
Isidor Strauss had a brother, Nathan Strauss. He was the co-owner of Macy's. Um, the backstory with Isidore and Ida was that they were on a trip together with Nathan, and I believe they went to Germany to visit. They had German roots. Their family was from Germany. And they had made a stop in what was then the British Mandate Palestine. They went, they toured, they were philanthropists, as I said. Nathan in particular was a ardent Zionist. And they were looking at the different institutions there and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they had their trip. Well, as it turned out, Nathan decided that he wanted to stay a little bit longer, and Isidore was impatient with Ida, and they went ahead and they begrudgingly left the brother behind, and telling him that he's got to really he should come with them. A little later, he got I guess a telegram was saying that listen, the boat's leaving from oh boy.
Wherever they were in London, yeah.
Yeah, they were in I think Southampton or wherever. And then they said, last chance to go. Anyway, I saw two different versions about Nathan. One said that he broke his leg. And the other one said that he just decided that no, it's too important. He wants to stay here in Israel. And but eventually, I think he may have made his way to England, but in any event, it was too late. I mean, too late. He missed it, and that's why he lived another 20 years or so. And but he was very, very impacted by his brother's and sister-in-law's death and the whole experience with the Titanic. He soon after, I think it may have been even 2 years or maybe even less, he ceased his involvement with work, and he devoted his life totally to philanthropy. Wow. He gave more money probably than it was extraordinary amounts. He saw that as his mission. I think he even said something to the fact like giving is my religion or something like that. But he was they were from assimilated German family. They were Jewish, but they were not so connected, but they were connected in their philanthropy, and they did have the values, even without necessarily with all the practice, but they were Isidore himself was a philanthropist, but Nathan ended up having a lot of things, a lot of memorials. He a whole town in Israel is named for him. Wow. The town of Netanya in Israel. I think he built the port, and it's called after him. But he was some of his many things was a soup kitchen. It's a Nathan Strauss soup kitchen that was opened in the old city of Jerusalem in 1921. And it's called on his name. Even you see there in the back, if you could see, there's a sign there, and that's in Hebrew. It says that it's the soup kitchen of Nathan Strauss.
Wow.
Here's a medical center, a health center that still exists. This is, you see cars of, nowadays. This is a recent picture. And this is on the street, 28 Strauss Street. It's named for him as well.
Thank you so much, Avrohom, for the fascinating information you've shared with us today. Listeners, we have so much more to discuss with Avrohom. He has a fascinating history still to come, but because of time, we have decided to break up this conversation into at least 2 episodes, possibly 3 episodes. So this is where we will end for today, but please be sure to tune in next week when we continue this discussion.
We thank you for taking the time to join us today for this truly an extraordinary story. To learn more about the story we shared, please visit our website, theordinaryextraordinarycemetery.com, where you will find the resources that were used to bring this story to life. If you are watching us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel like our episodes, because this helps put us up into the YouTube algorithm. And then also, if you are so interested, we now have an opportunity on our website, and I believe it's on our YouTube channel, if you care to buy us a coffee. On the bottom right, left-hand corner, I didn't know my left, my right, but left-hand corner of our website, there's a little tiny coffee cup. So this will help cover some of the production costs that go into this, the editing costs, and everything else that's involved in bringing you these ordinary and extraordinary stories.
And in case you aren't aware, so buying a cup of coffee, you might, if you listen to other podcasts, I know there's other podcasters that use this, but the really cool thing about the coffee feature is we get the full donation. So whatever amount you are feeling generous to want to donate, coffee doesn't take a fee from that or anything. So it comes straight to the website or straight to us as a donation. And like Dianne said, that will help defray our production costs. We pay fees to host our to a host service. We have to pay for the website. We pay membership dues for all the places that we use to do our research. So that's what your donations would help to support if you feel like buying us a cup of coffee. That really does help defray the cost of putting together these episodes for you, which we love doing, by the way, and we will continue to do.
Yes.
But if you are feeling generous and would like to do that for us, yes, if you go to the website or the YouTube channel, it's in the links. If you look at our alert links on the YouTube channel. And please don't forget to visit us on our social media, where we share all kinds of cemetery photos, quotes, tidbits, and more. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Ordinary Extraordinary Cemetery, and on X at OrdExtraCem. And in addition to, if you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, or another way to help us out is to leave us a 5-star review and a comment on either Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our website, and on YouTube. Leaving comments and reviews like that in all of those places really does help our podcast to grow. And it helps others who love cemeteries, stories, and history to discover us and all of the ordinary, extraordinary stories we plan to tell here.
Until we meet again.